Young people are a key focus of the Zayed Sustainability Prize. We recognize that today's youth are tomorrow's sustainability leaders, and we want to empower them with the knowledge, skills, and passion to take an active part in creating sustainable communities. The theme for today's panel is empowering the next generation of sustainability champions, and we are joined by Zayed Sustainability Prize alumni and industry experts who will share their experiences and hopefully inspire you to pursue a career in sustainability, where you can make an impact on the world and accelerate progress towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. To commence this panel, I would like to introduce Lamis Ben Harab, co-founder and CEO of Expedite Middle East Manufacturing, who will deliver a talk on her journey as an entrepreneur in the sustainability space. Join me in welcoming Lamis to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me. This is the main mic. Okay. Good evening. My name is Lamis Ben Harab. I am the CEO, co-founder of Expedite Middle East Manufacturing. I'm just going to take the first few minutes to introduce our company and what we do. We're a manufacturer of a wide range of natural disinfectants in Dubai Industrial City. When I say natural, I'm going to define that as our ingredients are 99% water, less than 1% salt, and we disinfect via a physical property, not a chemical reaction. So to explain that and why that's important and why I would define that under sustainability and sustainable goals. First of all, in this way, we can avoid promoting microbial resistance, which is a huge problem with disinfectants these days. We also don't have disinfection byproducts, which is a huge problem in water treatment. It makes our products safe to inhale, even though we've been in business way before COVID, as you can imagine. In COVID, this was very valuable because we were very easy to implement in public disinfection, working with the Ministry of Health, being able to be used in hospitals, with high efficacy. Our products are able with this charge to rupture the inner and outer membranes of all unicellular germs. So we kill indiscriminately all unicellular bacteria, viruses, fungi, and spores. And our efficacy is, we consider it high grade. We are a B2B company. We are currently not B2C, so we are mainly in across various industries. And since COVID, we have released some of our products on Noon and Amazon just out of responsibility for people to have access to disinfectants. As you remember, that wasn't so easy back then. But I'm not here to spend 15 minutes talking about my company. The title of this panel today is Empowering the Future Sustainability Champions. And what I'd really like to take these minutes and to speak about is making a case for entrepreneurship as a way to champion sustainability. For this, I'm going to go back to a perspective I actually had when I was a student way back when. And since we do have some students from Columbia tuning in, actually this was when I was a student in New York City, way back as a Pratt student on 14th Street, and I was doing a master's steeped in sustainability at the time. My perspective within my thesis was that the fact that we view sustainability as a niche is actually problematic, because that's not how the rest of the planet works. When sustainability is a niche, you end up having sustainability being an afterthought when it comes to policy, when it comes to manufacturing. Basically, what we're always trying to do, what the norm is we are trying to always just be less bad. So we are trying to slow down the ultimate resource depletion, slow down pollution, manage our waste. There's never really a resolution to these things. So what can really be done? What is the norm that we can replace with alternatives? A lot of people would argue that, okay, well, this is how it is, and it's basically what I always hear is, it's just how it is. And this is why, all these prizes and all these accolades go to people when they don't do that, when they kind of go the extra mile. So what I would actually argue towards, and this is not going to be a statement that's anti-invention or innovation or anti-science, but actually all the solutions, the scientific solutions, all the R&D for every single problem that's actually being caused out there in the environment, the solution really is out there. It already exists, the R&D exists. And for lack of slides, I'm just going to use my hands a bit more than I normally do. So we have all the science and all the R&D here, and it all exists. And we also have the market on this side that is notoriously known to not listen to scientists. So the way I view entrepreneurship really is the gap, because we know the gap filler essentially, because we know that this market does respond to free market capitalism. So the way I would, or the perspective I would like to offer is that if you utilize or develop or take a solution that already exists, you don't have to be the inventor. It's great if you are. It's great if you're the innovator, but you don't have to be. I didn't invent ionization, but my business is based in it. My first startup is based in biodisposables. I didn't invent biodisposables, but I did develop them, and I did develop the current products that we have for our current company, and I did recruit people that fill the gaps I needed to fill, and I did focus on the business side. And the reason I mentioned that is because and a lot of scientists, and even the scientists with me that are business savvy, the fact is most scientists are very focused on the R&D. They want to focus on the science, as they should. That's their zone of genius. But they are not good business minds. That's not where they excel at. And a lot of them just want to focus on what they're good at. That's where the entrepreneurial gap can be filled. And that's really what I'm trying to offer as a perspective, is that is really a route to market. Basically, the route to market can be your way of championing sustainability. I'm going to give an example from my first startup over a decade ago. I'd moved back to Dubai. I'd lived abroad for many years, and I was so exposed to composting and plant-based disposables, and just came back to my oil country that didn't have really a reason to replace single-use plastics at the time. Right now, of course, that's very different in the UAE and in Dubai. But at the time, my startup was actually quite revolutionary. And what we did is bring all these plant-based disposables. I was a supplier for plant-based disposables in the UAE. One of the ways that was easy for me to increase our revenue was focusing on where the problems really were. Because when you bring something new to the market, it's instead of just trying to convince people, see where the damage of this item is already happening. Our biggest revenue ended up being in the Maldives with resort chains. And that is because if you're in the Maldives and you're having a salad or you're using supplies there, usually the vegetables you're eating or the supplies you're using actually came through the UAE, because we're a HoReCa capital. So those supplies come from there because the Maldives are islands that don't have agricultural land that can actually supply all these commercial resorts, and don't have industrial land for factories and so on. So we saw a significant difference with the replacement of their plastic straws with my company's starch-based straws that were not as durable as the current biodisposable straws you see these days. Ours were very obviously starch-based. And speaking to the marine biologist there, we saw a huge difference with how those beaches were reacting to just the replacement of that item. So that was a very visible result that was made through a green result that was made through a business. And really, if we think about it, if you really go that route and you bring more of these alternatives, whatever your idea is, whatever your business is, make that the norm. It will just make it more accessible to people. The more accessible, the cheaper it will become, the more that will soon become the norm. So really, this is just an example of how you can go the entrepreneurial route to champion sustainability. I'm also a new mother to a 4-month-old, and now more than ever, I really do think about what kind of future we are really leaving behind. And we really need to change the norm, and we really need to be doing that now. So that's really what I have to say today, and thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Lemis, for your inspiring words. Now we will begin our panel discussion. I would like to welcome to the stage David Sandalo, inaugural fellow at Columbia University Center on Global Energy Policy, who is also a Zayed Sustainability Prize Selection Committee member. David will be moderating the panel. Joining David on stage are today's panelists, all winners or finalists of the Zayed Sustainability Prize. They include Guillermo Pepe, CEO of Mamutest, Thomas Rieger, CEO of Solar Kiosk Solutions, Nidhi Pant, CEO of S4S Technologies, and David Pong, CEO of Water Rome. Please join me in welcoming today's panelists, and over to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation, and I just want to echo the words of that tremendous Firestarter's remarks. Thank you, Denise. That was so inspirational and so thoughtful, and so true to my experience, I have to say. We need entrepreneurs in order to promote sustainability, because around the world, it's the private sector that implements a lot of what we're doing, and we need entrepreneurs to get out there and make everything we're talking about in the sustainability world profitable. We'll talk some about that, but congratulations. And I can't believe you have that much energy with a 4-month-old at home as well. So congratulations. We have 4 very inspirational people here I'll introduce in a minute, but before I do that, I want to thank the Zayed Sustainability Prize for all it's done over these many years. It's been a great honor for me to be part of the selection committee of the Zayed Sustainability Prize. But as we heard, over the course of the past 15 years, the Zayed Sustainability Prize has transformed literally millions of lives. And it's a great contribution of this country to the world. And we're going to meet right now 4 finalists and winners of the Zayed Sustainability Prize and hear what they do. And so let me introduce them. We have, to my immediate right on your left, Guillermo Pepe, CEO of Mamutest, which was founded in 2013. It's the first telemammography network in Latin America, and it provides preventive, high-quality health care to women. It currently operates in Argentina, Mexico, and it has plans to expand further. To Guillermo's right is Thomas Rieger, CEO of Solar Kiosk Solutions, which is a company with expertise in providing access to electricity through renewable energy in rural areas. And then to Thomas's right, we have David Pong, co-founder and CEO of Water Rome, a social enterprise that develops highly portable and efficient water filters that are simple to use, easy to deploy, and can operate even without electricity. And then on my far right, Nidhi Pant, CEO of S4S Technologies, a small business committed to improving malnutrition conditions in children, decreasing food waste, increasing farmer incomes, and empowering rural women. And so what we have here is representatives of 4 different sections of the Zayed Sustainability Prize. We've got food, health, water, and energy. So first, a big round of applause for our winners, just to get us started. And Guillermo, let me just start with you. One of each of you talk about what you do. What does your organization do, and what do you do? What's the vision?
Sure. Thank you. Hello?
I don't think so. There it is. Yep.
Thank you very much. Yeah, what we are doing is we are defeating breast cancer.
Not working. We need someone turning on.
Hello, hello.
There it goes.
Hello. Yeah. Well, Mamutest is defeating breast cancer. We are starting in Latin America, but we want to go global. It's a high quality diagnosis and patient support digital platform. Well, that's what we do.
Maybe say more about kind of how the organization came into existence and what are your visions for the future?
Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, the organization came into existence because I had a conversation with my father like about 10 years ago. He's a medical doctor specializing on breast imaging diagnosis. he told me he was frustrated because he had at the time about 50 years of career, and he wanted to save lives, he told me. But he was just telling women that they were going to die, that they were arriving late at the diagnosis. And I'm not a medical doctor, I studied business, but that immediately caught my attention to see my father frustrated at the end of his career. So I started to dig in to try to learn why women were arriving late at the diagnosis. I found out that if they arrived early, 98% of the women that were dying could have saved their lives. And we are talking about 700,000 women dying every year because of breast cancer. It's the #1 cancer in the world today. So while speaking with my father, I saw this huge problem that needed to be addressed, that my father couldn't tell me why women weren't arriving early to the diagnosis. So I started to do a research to try to learn what were the barriers that were separating women from having access to that diagnosis. And of course, I found out that there were many, but especially 4 that were distancing those women. Those were lack of technology, lack of mammography units, digital mammography units, lack of legislation that to encourage women to go for a diagnosis every year once they are 40 years old, lack of education in many places. Women don't know that they have to go yearly for a mammogram when they are 40 years old, and lack of medical doctors. Usually in developing economies, medical doctors are concentrated in big cities. So usually the rest of the country lack of that kind of specialized medical doctors. So that's why I saw the huge problem, I saw the barriers, and I decided to move forward and design the solution that is mammo testing.
Thank you for this. And I'll just add a personal note to what Guillermo was saying, because my own mother had breast cancer, recovered completely, and lived a wonderful life for decades after recovering completely. So thank goodness that she was able to get the early treatment
I'm glad she did.
Thomas, tell us about what you do at Solar Kiosk.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Solar Kiosk. So I'm actually a dinosaur or veteran of the PV industry. I started working in there in 2004, and I'm from Germany, so I was very privileged. And when the PV industry started, it was focusing on putting very expensive technology at that time into Germany so people can earn more money. Because we got a feed-in tariff, everybody put the solar panel on the rooftop, and then we could earn more money with this. Okay, wonderful. But during my career, I had the chance and the privilege to visit countries in Africa, where at this stage you still have over 700 million people living without access to electricity. That's Africa only. I see my friends from Bangladesh here, we have Pakistan, we have other developing countries that have the same problem. And the problem is systemic. The problem is, like you said, even in South America, services, access to products, access to quality education, access to healthcare, everything lacks as soon as you move out from urban environments. You have no electricity, no access to safe drinking water, which you can tell us about. It's a systemic problem. And we said to ourselves, because I'm an idiot, I'm in the solar industry, I bring energy there. Fantastic, good. That's how we started off. We brought energy to rural communities in Africa, not to cities, rural communities, which is very, very burdensome, because we all share that. We go to rural environments, we have high costs of operations, we have non-funked infrastructures, so it's very hard to do that. But the motivation drove us to do it. But once we brought energy there, we were in that community, we had energy, the people were happy, and then the next problem started, and they said, we have energy, can you bring us water? So what you do now? So slowly we went down the path to say, energy for us is the enabler in a community. When you have brought energy into a community, you can start working on other topics. You can start working on water purification powered by energy. You can electrify a healthcare center. Just put a few light bulbs in there, for crying out loud, and you can give a birth in the nighttime without having to try to shine a light with the mobile phone on what is happening there. And a lot of children die in Africa because there is simply no light in a health center. And you can go down the road with different services that they don't have. And we need to solve this problem. I mean, you know, we talk about a lot of sustainable development goals. We care about SDG 7, which is access to electricity, but we also care about poverty. But if I'm out there and I'm having a problem, a health problem, I need to take the bus. I need to drive to the city. It costs me money. I waste a couple of days to arrive in the capital where I can have my mammogram. What costs me this service of having that mammogram that I should do every year? The poorest people on the planet pay the highest prices most of the time for the shittiest quality products and services, and that needs to change. And we started to work on this conundrum to bring systemic change powered by energy, but then going beyond that to really change a couple of things. And we keep on fighting.
Thank you for that. We'll come back to both of you to hear more, but let me turn to David from Singapore and ask about Water Roam and what you do there.
Yeah, thanks for the question and thanks for having me. I started Water Roam in 2014, and that was 8 years ago when I was just about to graduate from the National University of Singapore. So I was having the opportunity to travel across different developing regions around our country, and I noticed that one particular issue is that many communities, especially in remote and rural locations, they were drinking directly from contaminated water sources, surface water sources, typically rivers, wells, streams. And I had the chance to go to Malaysia, Nepal, India, and many of these countries where there are still so many populations that are drinking from surface water sources. In fact, if I did a further study on it and found out that that number is 2 billion. 2 billion people. So that's 1/4 of the world that are still drinking from such contaminated water sources. It's no wonder that many are dying from waterborne diseases or having diarrhea and dysentery. So I tried to look at whether there are existing solutions, and together with my group of friends, we saw that it wasn't that there's a lack of solutions. In fact, there are so many solutions out there. But the issue is that many of these solutions don't cater to rural communities and underserved communities. And we found out that many of such solutions are either too complex, too difficult to use and maintain over time, and typically if it is sent into such a far and hard-to-reach location, if it is not serviced well, it's not maintained well, eventually it will become obsolete if no one knows how to maintain it. So that's where we started Water Roam with a mission to develop decentralized and portable water filtration solutions that can cater to such communities that are underserved with simple to use and easy to maintain and operate systems that can be logistically efficient to supply to anywhere in the world. That's why we call it Water Roam. You can roam to anywhere in the world with water. So today we have solutions that are very lightweight, very portable. It looks like a bicycle pump, inspired by a bicycle pump, and it filters water from rivers, wells, water sources that are surface water sources, and instantaneously provide clean drinking water for an entire community of 100 people without electricity. And so if we have electricity, even better. We can do even more with that. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. And Nidhi, tell us about the work you do at S4S Technologies. Nidhi's from India. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. I studied chemical engineering, and I started S4S, which stands for Science for Society, when I was in college with a group of college friends. We empower smallholder farmers to become processors, that they can convert their food waste, whatever is the cosmetically damaged produce, which does not get the right price in the market, ugly produce, into food ingredients. So we work with smallholder women farmers and help them with technology access to finance to buy the technology and provide them training, aggregate, and they convert the produce, say, from tomato to a ketchup. We would aggregate all of this produce, do quality control, to convert it into a more value-added product and sell it to food and beverage industry. We are working with 100,000 farmers and 1,200 micro-entrepreneurs. Why I started this was just to see the nature of the problem being so big. India loses food worth $14 billion, and that is around 30 to 40% of our entire value chain. And when we started looking at the solution, when we started looking at the solution, we realized that we need to prevent this at source. And when we go to the farms, we are seeing 126 million smallholder farmers who live in poverty, don't have access to energy, so solutions like cold chain or cold storage would not work there. Also, if you see food industry, everything is in a central unit, would happen in a big factory because of energy access not being in the villages. So the farmer cannot be a processor at all. And at that point of time, we realized that we need a system which is more decentralized, that gives more equity to the farmers so that they can, through the value addition that can happen on the produce, they can earn an additional income. And that's where we try to match what is needed by the farmers and what's needed by the market. So providing them an end-to-end solution that can help them earn an assured additional income through value addition. And that's what we do. When we started, it was a small number of farmers that we were working with, and now we're working with 100,000 farmers that, for whom we help them prevent the food wastage, give an assured additional income that doubles down their household income. We work with 100% women farmers for processing of the produce and prevent 60,000 tons of food from getting wasted. So an integration of gender, energy, and food that helps us create this impact.
You know, it's so inspirational listening to all of you. It's just think about what we just heard. We just heard people who are fighting breast cancer, one of the biggest killers in the world, people who are bringing energy to poor communities, people who are bringing clean water to poor communities, and people who are helping rural farmers increase their income. And I think one common denominator that I hear listening to all of them is these are people who are following their dreams, and people who are saying, I want to make a change in the world and I'm going to make it happen. And at least two of you said, it might, both David and Nidhi said that they started either during university or right after university. I don't know about Guillermo and Thomas, but they started at a very young age. I'm a professor, and I often have students come to me and say, they're looking for career advice, and they ask me questions like, should I go into the private sector or should I go into an NGO? And my answer to them is always, what's your dream? I said, there's no right answer to that question. But whatever your dream is, follow that, because that's where you're going to be the most successful. And I think these four are just a great example of that. In a moment, by the way, I want to throw it open to questions for anyone from the audience, and I think we have microphones. So if you, in a moment, if you have a question, please raise your hand. But just some questions for each of you, just to elaborate. I mean, Guillermo, one thing I wondered about listening to you is that I'm not an expert in the health sector, so I might have this wrong. But my impression is the health sector is dominated by really big businesses, that there aren't that many small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so is that true? And so do you have any advice for people who want to be entrepreneurs in the health sector?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, as you said, it's dominated by huge companies, usually pharmaceutical companies that run the business. But, and I saw that when I started. And luckily, I guess Thomas and me, we didn't have the chance to start this kind of social impact business during the university, because during our times in university, the people weren't aware of what businesses were, how businesses were damaging in general the world, right? So they didn't stimulate us, they didn't motivate us to go for these kind of businesses. I actually, before starting Mammoth, started an e-learning company. I used to have a restaurant chain in Spain, theaters, regular businesses. And I found out, even if some of them were successful, not the e-learning company, I went bankrupt with that one, but the restaurants and the theater in Spain, I was really successful, but I was maybe 32 years old, 33, and even if I was making money, I was feeling empty. And this is what you just said. It's about following your dreams, following your passion. And I found out when I was 32, 33, I wish I had the opportunity to start before, that I didn't want to, to do regular business. I wanted to do something that was meaningful for me and for the world. So I started to look for problems where I could add my value. And this is when, speaking with my father, I found out that I could start there. Mm-hmm. So I know it wasn't the question, but it's something that is important to say, that now that you that are really young have the opportunity to start a social company maybe at the university, and that you are being inspired and motivated at the university level, take that opportunity. You won't believe how this will fulfill your heart and maybe also your pockets. You never know, because you could also do that, right? Yeah. So and this is why when I started in the health business, even when I saw the pharmaceuticals dominating the market, I saw a huge need to bring solutions to the people, not just at the level where the pharmaceuticals were working. And I saw that they had the funds in order to do that. So I started to think of ways to attract their funds to solve the existing problems. Instead of fighting them, join them, and maybe using their funds in order to solve the problems that were occurring at that moment.
Thomas, so speaking of funds and money, you're working in poor communities, and the poor communities, they need the energy, but almost by definition, they have a hard time paying for the energy because they're so poor. How does that affect the work you do? How do you manage to make financial returns working with poor communities?
Yeah, let me go a step back and let me actually say something that you also already reflected on. Sustainability means continuous business, and to do continuous business and something that stays and grows and lasts, there must be money flowing. We're in a capitalist world. You could go to an NGO and come, we call them the white elephants, put the donation somewhere, batteries after 5 years empty, and that project will be lost forever because nobody's going to use it. So if you want to build something that lasts, you must make sure that in your organization there is money flowing. That's part of that sustainability, and you can decide if you do it rather as a social enterprise that has modest incomes, or if you full-on capitalist. But true, you need to look at who is your user and who is the person you're addressing. What is his available income? And how can I, with that premise, make business and increase my business? Scalability, right? And then we come to this nexus where we said in the beginning, okay, I bring a light to your house. You pay me some money, so you have electricity, you can charge your mobile phone, done. But when you want to go on, when you want to grow with the community, and that's one of our goals, we don't want to come in, take your money, and then disappear. We want the community to prosper. That's why you bring energy there. And then I'm coming to what she said, which is something that is completely similar. You need to think about how does this energy add value to the community. You can increase the yield of farmers, you can reduce post-harvest, you can do post-harvest loss reduction, you can do decentralized processing of agricultural products. To increase the income of a farmer, he has more money available to spend, and he can now start having a better livelihood, a better quality of life, because there's things he can afford which he couldn't before, and maybe he has to work less. So you need to think about the end user, you need to think about your organization, you need to think about what solution is there, and then you need to work hard to create. It's not given. We did a lot of studies, we all worked hard to come up with some solutions to do that. But yes, that is the hard part of the work, but if you get there, it's truly phenomenally empowering to yourself, and when your dream comes true, and you see that the community thrives, and you see how they change when you are there, that's your reward. That's the real reward that cannot be weighed with money, by the way.
Thank you for that. And I guess I really have the same question for both David and Nidhi. You're both working in poor communities. And so how do you make that work? If the communities don't have the ability to pay, how does this turn into something sustainable?
So there is a myth that money worth more than you actually, were able to have before and increase your quality of living. Then people can start making savings. And with that savings, you have a higher income that you can consume. And if I increase your value, you have more income that you can consume. And you now start to do true development on what we can do, because I'm more already kind of an infrastructure developer, but the infrastructure within the country also has to follow, and that's where governments come in. And one of the fantastic things on the Zayed Sustainability Prize on here, and everywhere else is we need to start sitting on the table, and everybody needs to take everybody as a respectful partner, and we need to start partnerships, SDG 17, corporations. I now learn about you, and I want to talk with you about the water solution. I want to talk with you, how can we cooperate on agricultural farming and products. It happens here, it happens through partnerships from like-minded companies, and you have an advantage, what you said before. You can study and you hear in your university about sustainability, about topics concerning environment and the world. We didn't have that. That was not a topic when we studied. Forget about it. So take that opportunity. If you're encouraged to go in that direction, do it. It's my advice.
Thank you. David, what's your experience with this?
I fully echo what Thomas has been saying. In terms of the diversity of who you get to meet in events or even in the university, it was me who was able to connect together with my other co-founders who are engineers. So I was from the business side of things. And that was how we are able to co-create a solution together. You need different brains and different aspects of skills and talents. So yeah, on that note, coming back to the finance question, similar to what Thomas also shared about the rural communities being able to pay. We did a study on how much rural communities are paying for water, and that percentage ranges between 10% all the way to 30%. 30% if they're buying water, bottled water, every single day. And imagine paying 1/3 of your income just for water. There are many communities which are willing to pay and have to pay or forced to pay such amount for the access to water, which may not even be considered clean. So that's the reality. So how do we make this work? We have to look at different communities because the level of affluence in each community is very different. So for certain communities, we see that what they can afford to pay is amount that helps to cover for the operating expenses. So in that regard, we need to find ways to cover the capital expense first, and then subsequently figure a way for their contribution to ensure that the operating expense can be covered, and for future maintenance, sustainability of the project to be ongoing, we got to ensure that their payment helps to cover for that. Yeah, so different consumers and different market segments, we will have a different business model because we also cater to a disaster relief model. So for example, we've deployed to more than 40 different countries for humanitarian crisis, refugee situations, and even right now the Ukraine war situation. There are our solutions that are being deployed, and these are typically bought by the NGOs or international humanitarian organizations. So different models to help to cover for the expenses, whether it's operating expense or capital expense.
Thank you. Nidhi, do you have experience with this? And
Yes, I think what we all are trying to say is through value creation and then value sharing. Unless and that value creation cannot happen without only a technological solution, but a business model innovation as well. We need to design for the customer. So we need to know who are we working with, who is our customer. So just in our case, when we were young, when I was young, like in college, I thought, oh, there's a problem of food wastage. I have a cool technological solution, and the farmer will pay for it. For the longest time, we were able to sell this equipment to the farmer, but what we realized that we were only able to tap into large-holder farmers, and large-holder farmers are like businessmen. They can afford it. But what about the smallholder farmer? And at that point of time, we realized it, and I think when we were young, we were really married to our solution, and we were not mindful to keep the customer at the center. But when we started listening to the voices unheard, started looking what the farmer needs, we realized that they either want us to decrease cost or help them earn more. So you either like save my cost or help me earn more. And that's when we realized that it's going to be unaffordable for them. And that's when we pivoted. We added like this. We were engineers. We were not knowing how to sell food ingredients. We pivoted from being a equipment manufacturing, food processing company to today a food processing platform where we said that, okay, smallholder women farmers, all these women farmers are new to credit. They don't have any historical data. There's no one in their family who's going to invest in her, who's going to tell her that, oh, this is our disposable. Firstly, they don't have a disposable income. They live in poverty. No one is going to invest in her business saying, okay, take this money and buy this equipment and start a business. So we clearly knew that what our customer needed, who's a smallholder women farmer. So we told her that, okay, take this equipment, we will facilitate the financing from the bank, and when you start earning through this equipment, you will pay per go, you will pay, or there is a rental model, you need to pay a fraction of what you earn. So first we helped them earn more. There was an additional income of $1,000, and from that we said, okay, 200 of it every year goes to the equipment. So the most important part is listening to the customer, who are you serving for, and not being married to the solution, but being married to the problem. And the problem here being that we need to give energy access for productive use to all these smallholder farmers. And when this technological innovation got married to a business model innovation where we are no longer selling technology, but selling food from those equipments that these women make, and through that value addition are able to sell this to large companies like Nestle, Unilever, we are able to create that value, and that's when we make the equipment affordable. And at that point of time, we got bank financing for these women who were new to credit. So that got added with a innovative financing solution. So I think what we all are trying to create is, tell us that if you think where you can create the value first, the affordability gets solved in the way, because we cannot scale with grant money, we cannot scale with government money. It could help us do testing for a few women, but if you want to reach everyone, it needs to be seamless, it needs to have a solution which is ingrained in our business model. And that's where it requires us not to be married to to the solution, but be married to the problem, that we are going to take anything to just solve it. So first creating value and then making it affordable. I think there are many models like these in Africa and other developing countries that solve for the financing and makes everything affordable for the end consumer.
Thank you for that thoughtful answer, and I'm going to remember married to the problem and married to the solution. That's a great way of summing up the way of thinking about it. Speaking of value, I want to ask each of you about the value of the Zayed Prize, and maybe coming the other direction, starting with Nidhi. But before I do that, I just want to see whether anybody in the audience has any questions or comments that they'd like to offer. Great, I see a few hands. First hand is gentleman in red right there. And I think we have microphone.
I actually have two questions. First one is that they actually give a great examples into how to make cash flowing into business. But my question is, we are youth, so we need to start a business, sustainable business. How we can get a lot of money to start this business? Actually, this is the first question. Second question is that most startups and business actually fail out into the beginning. So this is a sustainable business. Actually, most hard than normal business. So how to avoid fail into the beginning? Thank you.
I'm going to start with our two youth entrepreneurs here. Nidhi and David, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I think the first one being that when you are youth, when you are young, your risk-taking ability is much higher. You can really experiment. You don't have much responsibilities. So when you are young, how do you get capital, I would say, is the secondary thing. But if you, like today, you have really a lot of accelerators, you have incubators, you have resources in the university. So idea is to validate your idea first. So start by, say, participating in competitions, like small competitions, reaching out to networks of mentors, your advisors who can really help you understand what your market size is. So if you have some brief idea about what you want to do, I think there is enough capital available at this point of time at an early stage, much more than what it was like a few years back, and specifically also for sustainability business. So definitely an access to capital would be a secondary problem. I would start with understanding what the market size is and then reaching out to various of these incubators, accelerators. I would let David take the second.
Yeah, on the first question about capital, I think for us, what we subscribe to is the lean startup methodology. I think that is really helpful to come up with a minimum viable prototype or a product that you can start to pitch to your customers or to prospective customers and just get them to start buying, because the day that you are able to clinch sales, that becomes your early revenues. You don't even have to wait for grant money or funding or investment funding to come in. So the faster you can prove that traction, that you have early users or early customers, that's going to bring in naturally the wave of investment and VC capital that eventually you would like to get. But I think do remember also that I just read an article today that the age of unicorn and the time for unicorn is coming to a decline. And now we are seeing that more and more companies need to be like a camel. So which means, like you mentioned about having, how do we raise a lot of money? It may be more difficult and challenging in the current climate. And we are called to be more like camels, where we know how to run the business more sustainably and to be more conservative with our expenses and not burning at such a rate that we cannot sustainably operate in the long run. With regards to the question about failure and risk, I think it really depends on person to person, on how you are built as an entrepreneur. For me, I take risks, but I take calculated risks. That means I would ensure that I calculate the different factors of the consideration in the decision before going ahead with a certain decision. I wouldn't take a gambling risk. A gambling risk means you're not really sure about banking on channeling all your research and development funds into product A or product B, and you just take a gamble on one of it. But I would go more for calculated risk to know how to balance the amount of capital we have, the cash flow we have, human resource we have, and then make that decision to go ahead in our business strategy going forward.
There was a question here. Yes, ma'am. In the front row.
This question for both businesses are based on B2B or B2C criteria. You just said that communities or individuals usually have the money, but they rather direct it to unsustainable solutions. So what were your communication messages for them to actually convince them directing their money or their investment for themselves on your sustainable solutions, each one of you?
I think we focused about building trust. So we are a B2B solution on the food customer end and a B2C solution at the farmer's end. So we did everything that can help us build trust with the women that we work with. And we took a customer journey. We first started mapping who all are the stakeholders. So we saw that, okay, for women to work, it is important that their family supports them. So what it takes for the husband to be part of the conversation and who can get us there. So for us, it was important that we reached out to the local non-profits who were working in the community to reach out to the government and have a very strong and consistent message that what is going to be value addition. And I think the best example to do anything is to do a pilot, which is to demonstrate some of the trust and make sure that at any point of time we don't create any sort of trust deficit in the process. So to be as transparent as possible. So first taking an ecosystem approach where through everything we reach out a consistent message to them. Second is to demonstrate what is the value that we bring in and to make them a part of the conversation or what we are building so that they feel as equal partners and not as a labor relationship. They feel they're entrepreneurs, so there's enough amount of freedom that they can do. And third is to keep adding value to their life. So we do a lot of, whatever the earning they have, we do a lot of financial literacy camps for them. We do nutritional training for them. A lot of times, these things also make them such a big part of our, like a big S4S family and not as a separate entity, but as equal partners that when we win, we all win so that the quality is right, everything is right. So just having some of those things to them in a more consistent, in a partnership-driven way, that is what I would say.
We're running low on time, and so I want to be sure to bring in, I know we had another question or two here, but Thomas, looked like you had a quick answer to that. Did you? No?
No, we can speed it up what she said. So behavioral change campaign, inclusiveness, when you go there, discuss with the stakeholders. I would like to add one more important thing, be there. But when we are talking about last mile communities. You have to be there to not only gain the trust, but to keep the trust. Otherwise, if you go away, you lose the trust very rapidly. And then you know, the comfortable thing is you don't have to spend a lot of money in marketing. You do the pilot like she said, and when the people see, it's like word of mouth travels fast in those communities. They see something works, and it will be adopted very, very quickly. But to adopt is going to be very expensive and different marketing expenses than you have when you buy an ad campaign or a TV campaign to sell a new car here. No, you need to go out there and you need to do your field work and you need to calculate those operational expenses in there.
Thank you. Let's get questions from here. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Sunita Bandari and I'm from Nepal representing Kopila Valley School. And thank you so much to all the panelists. It was really nice to hear about your stories. And while listening to you all, I could relate that all of your project could be really applicable in our area, in our Nepal, because it's a developing country and we have all those challenges. So I was thinking, how could an individual, how could an youth from us be an agent to replicate your model in our communities? So yeah, thank you.
How can what you're doing be replicated around the world? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Let's have that agent talk. When we do, and what David said before, this is very important, and communities are different. If I go to Africa and I go to Kenya, you think, it's one country, you do your business model and then you replicate. No, Africa is 56 tribes or even more. I don't have the number by heart. And when I go to the Maasai tribe, which are, the cattle herders, or I go to Kisumu, which are fishers, it changes. It's already, maybe I need to adapt my business model in this local context. If I go to Nepal, maybe I need to, look at localizing the business model. While we go along, we learn slowly, but that's a learning process. Where every new country we go, what's the difference to where we've been before? To set our KPIs as such that I know what do I need to recognize that can change if I go somewhere else in order to be ready to scale on an international level. I had discussions with Nepal before with people that were providing schools with drinking water, and there were a lot of things that we wanted to do. But when you want to do that growth, you need to be ready. You need to go into some kind of franchising model where I say, I have this, and we want to replicate it in Nepal, but let's look at the business model on the ground before, and especially those values that might change from one country to the next in order to replicate. But we're very happy to discuss these things because we want to grow at some stage. But in order for us to grow, for all of us, we have to first reach our first size that we can say, now we are, very well in that country. Now we can take on the task to grow, because otherwise you lose your focus and your operational excellence. And that's for everybody. Don't grow too fast. One thing I just want to throw out there, you talked about mistakes before. Do not grow too fast. You're killing your business. If you cannot master your operations anymore and you grow too quick, you are going to have a problem very, very quickly. So always grow in the right pace.
We are over time, but we have one more question in the audience. I want to bring it in, and then a quick answer, and then we're going to move on to the next speaker.
Huh?
Now it's working, yep.
It's not really a question, is that whenever you're working with communities, faraway communities, you have to know what they want, not what you want. You have to listen to them all the time. You don't have all the solutions. You are stepping in their lives, so please listen to them. Don't think you have all the solutions. You do not have it. You're going to listen to them, and then you're going to, with them, have an answer for it.
Thank you for that powerful point. And would you like to introduce yourself briefly, because we have a prize winner here, I think. And
I won this year the Health Zayed Sustainability Prize, and I work with indigenous people in the Amazon forest. So please listen to whoever you're working with. We do not have the solution. We have to work the solution with them.
Thank you for that message. Thank you for all your tremendous work, and congratulations on winning the prize. This could keep on going for so long. I'm so frustrated to have to call it to a close, but thank you so much. Congratulations to all of you. Guillermo, Thomas, David, Nidhi. Please join me in giving them a big round of applause. And now, to close out our program, I am so excited to invite to the stage, I think it's my job to invite to the stage, somebody I think the people here at Khalifa know very well, Professor Dr. Steve Griffith, Vice President for Research and Development here. Steve, please join us. And now I think you leave, yeah. Thank you very much. good to see you.
It's good to see you too, David. Nice to see you again. Welcome back to the
I'm so delighted to be here. And Steve is a busy guy. I know he was just on stage over at ADNEC, and you had to miss the beginning of this session. But we've had some tremendous conversations about entrepreneurialism, we talked some about students and their role. But maybe just to start with a question about research and development and entrepreneurialism, because that was a theme here already. And kind of, I know in my country, in the USA, universities are very good at producing research and development. They're not always that good at producing entrepreneurs, and they're not necessarily that good at taking the lessons from research and development and turning them into companies. Is that something you're working on here, and any thoughts on that topic?
That's a great question. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the discussion today with the panelists. Luckily, it was a great panel. At the university, so we'll talk about Khalifa University and what we're doing. At our visionary level, we aspire to be a university which is at the forefront of 21st century universities, or research intensive. So I think about research intensity. I don't think it's just about publishing papers and doing the academic things. I think about the innovation piece. Innovation is about creating a solution for whoever your customer is that's going to add value to that person. So there's 3 pillars that we're pursuing at the university, and I think these are all pillars that need to be pursued when you're looking at innovation. One is education, and so I'm in charge of research, but when you look at the education, you're talking about creating the human capital that can become the entrepreneur. So in today's society, in today's world, what you really need to think about is how you create a student that is not just someone who's trained in the traditional sciences and engineering disciplines. You got to think about people that can be analytical thinkers, they got to be critical thinkers, they got to be creative. They've got to be very resilient to a very rapidly changing world. That feeds into the R&D. In R&D, yes, we do things methodically. We do things in a very scientific way so that we can address societal challenges. But if you're trying to become an entrepreneur, if you want to be someone that's going to make impact, it doesn't really stop there. The third pillar of what we're trying to achieve is economic development. Economic development, to me, that underpins innovation, and that underpins the entire translation of what we're doing with our students and our research into value creation. So economic development is about really finding a solution and not a technology that's looking for a solution. So I always tell people, don't tell me what your technology is, tell me what your solution is and how whatever you've done in your education, in your research, can translate to something that creates the value. So at the university, visionary level, we do want to be this paradigm for the 21st century research intensive university, but that needs to be very tightly coupled with thinking about innovation in a holistic way.
I'm curious, from your vantage point, you're seeing lots of different solutions, lots of different technologies. Any that particularly excite you right now, areas that you think are particularly hot that people should be paying attention to? Or?
Well, I'll give you the perspective. So the UAE has now established a Research and Development Council. I'm a member of the council. It's chaired by His Highness Sheikh Abdullah. And so this year there will be a number of themes rolled out. There'll be sectors that are being looked at very closely, and then there'll be a number of priority technology domains in which we think these sectors can be best addressed by the technology we'll develop. Energy transition is extraordinarily important. That is one of the major themes we're going to be rolling out. Second is water security. So in addition to looking at energy, we know water is quite important. The third is health, human health. It ties in a lot with sustainability. But to me, if you're looking at where you're trying to create well-being, in addition to climate and water issues, health is extraordinarily important. And the fourth is food security. So there's 4 major areas that we need to address. Now, underpinning technology platforms, to me that's very exciting, because once I know there's these domains where we need to tackle big challenges, the big existential kind of challenges facing the planet, how do you do it? What are those technology sets that allow you to really do something new? Advanced materials and manufacturing is one area. So, UAE now, Khalifa University got this extraordinarily large grant, $100 million with graphene 2D materials. We're seeing how we can take the next generation of materials into applications which can feed into all the challenges faced around energy transition, healthcare, water, and food. Other one is intelligent and secure digital systems. I don't talk about artificial intelligence itself because everyone's now hearing about artificial intelligence. I'd say intelligent systems that can do something for you that are secure. Machine learning is a big part of that, but there's other pieces to it as well, robotics, data science, and the like. When you talk about particular technologies, you can go on forever about what's really exciting. Because this is the year of COP28 for the UAE, because we're pursuing sustainability, There's a few topics I think are important, and they allow me to give examples of where I see what I'm talking about brought into action. You first have to think about what your solution needs to be. And so if we're looking at where we really need to have a big impact is dealing with carbon. Now, we can hope that we totally get rid of it, and we don't have to deal with it. From my view, since we're now getting more into adaptation and dealing with the fact that there is likely to be carbon, residual carbon to some extent, how do we make good use of it? I think in the coming years, we're going to see a huge opportunity set around the utilization of carbon dioxide, not because it's a villain, it's because it can turn into valuable products. And there's a lot of work to be done in materials, say catalysts. We have established research centers at university here. We have a research center devoted to catalyst membrane separations because utilizing carbon dioxide for things like sustainable aviation fuel is extraordinarily important. You can really think about the next generation of transportation fuels by utilizing something today, which is not good. Second area, which is interesting, is trying to find all the ways in which we can conserve energy, and not from the perspective of going to just electricity, but how do you move away from energy requirement completely? So rather than using, say, a thermal separation, maybe there's a new material which can be a membrane, which can do the separation for you without having to use much energy at all, particularly thermal energy. So you know a lot of times there's combustion of fossil fuels to do that. Materials is great, and when you're thinking about materials, it brings you into that whole digital realm. The future of materials is not so much going into the lab and playing around and seeing what works. You design materials utilizing artificial intelligence. In the future, there'll be a lot more quantum computing. If you haven't started thinking about quantum, it's a little bit sophisticated to get into a conversation here, but quantum computing, quantum sensing, quantum communication, quantum computing itself will be a way in which we can design new material systems. So we can go on forever, but I'd say that just gives you a little bit of an idea. As you're an entrepreneur that wants to come to solutions that are going to have impact, there's so much to be done. It's a great time to be in the space of, at least I wish I were a student again.
That was such a thoughtful, detailed answer, Steve. I'm curious, knowing what an expert you are, to follow up on your comments on artificial intelligence, because as you say, that's a hot topic right now. And there's this artificial intelligence tool that was just published that can answer questions in 5 paragraphs called ChatGPT.
I use it. It's fun. It's fun.
And schools all over the world are now worried about their students using ChatGPT as, to answer test questions. But any thoughts from the work you do on the potential for artificial intelligence to accelerate work in any of these areas, or actually, guardrails we might need to put around artificial intelligence because of problems that could create? Is that something that you or your colleagues have been thinking about here?
It is. So at the university, we have centers around robotics. So robotics, when you talk about artificial intelligence, you talk about natural language processing. That's ChatGPT, GPT, computer vision and machine learning applications, trying to get information and insights from data, which you couldn't get through traditional means. I think artificial intelligence will be pervasive through everything that we do, whether it's materials discovery, it's trying to understand what's out there in the world as far as the information base that we have and make sense of that, gain new insights. ChatGPT, if we're going to see how we can start to get novel information that we can convey in a more meaningful way, that can come through these natural language processing approaches. Any organization in the world that needs to be looking at its resilience is going to go into artificial intelligence and some area of robotics, because today, if you want to be able to deal with the volatility that's coming toward us, relying on all human work, relying on all humans to do the dull, dirty, dangerous things which can be replaced by intelligent systems, it just makes sense. That brings me to the guardrail, though. If we're coming to how we are going to have artificial intelligence productively interact with society, we want to make sure that we're augmenting people and not always replacing people in places where it just doesn't make sense, because that's going to be a natural challenge for society if we start bringing machine learning intelligence systems into places where you don't really get value from it. Secondly is, once you train these systems using particularly machine learning, it's like statistics. I mean, I've done statistics for a very long time. Imagine if you're doing a regression and the data you have is not right. It's biased in a certain way that doesn't reflect the underlying population you're trying to understand. It's going to be wrong statistics. Machine learning is just really fancy statistics. So you've got to be very rigorous in your thinking about what you're doing with this new technology suite, because it goes back to classical ways of being trained and being a rigorous academic person, being someone who understands statistics, but it's now being applied in ways which are very sophisticated, in some ways being used to make decisions which could be harmful. So I am personally much in favor of putting a very clear set of guidances around the deployment of artificial intelligence, making sure that we're pursuing rigorous research in its transparency and its interpretability, to make sure that we know what we're actually getting out of the systems is something that we can understand, and utilizing that to make our decisions so that we can hopefully bound the results that are coming to us around this technology suite.
I want to close by asking you about advice for students, but before doing that, just I can relate quickly my experience with ChatGPT in the past couple of months, because I was pretty fascinated with it when it came out, like a number of people. And one thing I did was I asked it, because I work on clean energy, and I was wondering what's the potential application of artificial intelligence for clean energy. So I decided I'll ask ChatGPT that question. So I said to ChatGPT, what's the potential application of artificial intelligence for clean energy? And it gave me 5 paragraphs of an incredibly thoughtful answer. It was pretty interesting, talking about how artificial intelligence could improve the management of grids, could accelerate energy innovation, and some other things. That's pretty impressive. But I've also had some experiences where ChatGPT gave me some wrong answers. And I read one commentary that ChatGPT is very confident in giving you its wrong answers. Thank you for saying that. So ChatGPT is an artificial intelligence tool that you can get just on the web. And it's a program, and you can go to it, and just like you type in a Google search engine a term, you can put in a question, and it will give you not a number of links, but it'll give you like 5 paragraphs of text in answer to the question. It's pretty remarkable, actually, and it's gotten a lot of attention because it's pretty good at what it does, but as I was just saying, it's not always right, and it doesn't know when it's wrong, and so there's a lot of reasons to be careful about this tool, but this is a whole other panel. But I think artificial intelligence is going to change a lot of things in the years ahead. It's not I didn't know that. You said it's not supported here? Ah. Thank you for that. Well, so this is a little bit of a diversion, actually. I mean, but an important topic, I think, because this is a technology area that I think is going to be very important in the years ahead.
Agreed.
We're talking about technology. Let me just close, Steve, by asking you for any advice that you would give students who are interested in pursuing any of these areas, any wisdom to impart as we close.
Well, I don't want to use cliches, but I will. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and if the best way to predict the future is to create it. I think students out there now have an opportunity to use a tremendously advanced and powerful technology suite to look for ways in which those technologies don't get pushed at people, but can address real challenges that we need to address today. Sustainability is first and foremost. I'd say if you want to really have an impact, make sure that you are going out, you're engaging with organizations, doing internships, really seeing where there's value to be created. Come back and then understand how you can apply what you're doing in your education and your research to do something which is going to be a solution. I can tell you one thing, and those of you that are entrepreneurs and have ever talked to someone who's trying to, or someone you're trying to raise money from, don't come and say you have a technology. Say you have a solution. Then they'll start to be interested. If you just got something that's really neat, but you don't know what you're going to use it for necessarily, you're probably not going to get what you want out of that conversation. So, as I say, it's a great time to be out there trying to do something that's going to make impact. There's a lot of impact to be made, and go to it.
Well, you know, this has been a really interesting event. An event this good doesn't happen without some hard work by a number of people. I see one sitting in the front row here, right here, Ali. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody who helped put this event together. Please join me in giving them, Dr. Griffiths, and all our panelists a big hand. Thank you.